He thought he had committed the perfect crime. There were no witnesses to see what he'd done. No fingerprints left behind to trace back to him. Not a single piece of physical evidence that could link him to the scene. He was convinced he had gotten away with it, that his secret was safe forever. But one small, almost insignificant mistake was about to unravel his entire plan and change everything. It all happened in a quiet, unassuming neighborhood, the kind of place where people feel safe and nothing ever seems to go wrong. On this particular night, the streets were silent, the houses were dark, and everyone assumed it was just another peaceful evening. He moved through the shadows, confident that his actions would remain invisible, buried under the cover of darkness. He truly believed that no one would ever know what he had done, that his crime would become just another unsolved mystery. For a while, it seemed like he was right. The initial investigation hit a dead end, and the trail went cold almost immediately. Weeks turned into months, and the secret he held remained his and his alone. He lived his life normally, blending back into society, carrying the weight of his actions without a single soul suspecting a thing. The memory of that night was locked away, a ghost that only he could see. This wasn't some reckless, impulsive act. He was a meticulous planner, someone who prided himself on his attention to detail. He was careful, calculated, and overwhelmingly confident in his abilities. For months, he had studied the layout, the routines, the blind spots. Every move he made on that fateful night was choreographed, rehearsed in his mind 1,000 times over. He wore gloves, of course. He used shoe covers to avoid leaving footprints. He wiped down every surface he might have touched, from the doorknob to the light switch. He made sure to avoid security cameras, taking a convoluted route that he had mapped out well in advance. In his mind, his plan wasn't just good, it was flawless. He had considered every possibility, every potential weakness, and had a countermeasure for each one. He was convinced he had erased every single trace of his presence, leaving nothing but a void for investigators to stare into. But in the world of crime, as in life, it's often the tiny, overlooked things that make the biggest difference. A single detail that seems insignificant, a brief moment of carelessness, can be the thread that unravels the entire tapestry. He was so focused on the big picture, on the obvious evidence, that he grew blind to the microscopic breadcrumbs he was leaving behind. He had checked every door, every window, every corner of the room. He mentally retraced his steps, ensuring he hadn't dropped a hair or a fiber from his clothing. He was so certain of his own perfection. Yet, in his hubris, he missed one thing. One small, modern convenience that most of us carry every day without a second thought. It was the one element he hadn't factored into his otherwise brilliant plan, and it was silently watching his every move. So, what was this critical mistake? What was the one tiny detail that brought his perfect crime crashing down? It wasn't a forgotten glove or a stray footprint. It was something far more mundane, something so integrated into our daily lives that we often forget it's even there. The killer forgot to check his phone's location data. In his pocket, his smartphone was quietly and diligently doing its job, logging his every step. The device recorded his movement throughout the entire night, creating a precise digital map of his journey. It showed him leaving his home, traveling to the neighborhood, and arriving at the exact location of the crime at the exact time it was committed. That single GPS log, a piece of data he never even thought to erase, turned months of careful planning into a digital confession. It was the silent witness he never accounted for, and its testimony would be undeniable. With this new lead, investigators began to piece together the puzzle. What once seemed like a dead-end case was suddenly full of possibilities. They started connecting the dots, one by one. The GPS data from his phone was the key that unlocked everything else. It allowed them to cross-reference his movements with other seemingly unrelated pieces of information. They found faint, partial shoe impressions near the scene that matched a pair of shoes he owned. They analyzed cell tower data that corroborated his phone's GPS logs, creating a second layer of location proof. They went through his text messages and call history, finding subtle hints and inconsistencies in his alibi for that night. Each tiny oversight, each digital breadcrumb, became another piece of the puzzle. The evidence that had been invisible at first, hiding in plain sight within the ones and zeros of his digital life, was now coming together to paint a crystal-clear picture of his guilt. And just like that, the perfect crime was no longer perfect. The walls he had so carefully constructed around his secret began to crumble. With a warrant based on the digital evidence, law enforcement arrived at his door. The look of shock on his face was unmistakable. He had been living with the belief that he was untouchable, that he had outsmarted everyone, but he hadn't outsmarted the technology in his own pocket. He was arrested, and the confident, meticulous planner was replaced by a man facing the severe consequences of his actions. All because of a mistake he thought would never matter. What seemed like a minor, trivial detail to location services on his phone ended up being the very key that locked him away. His intricate plan, his months of preparation, all of it was undone by a handful of kilobytes of data. This story serves as a powerful reminder that sometimes the smallest oversight can be the most dangerous. A single mistake, one that nobody might notice at first, has the power to change everything. Whether it's in the commission of a crime or simply navigating the challenges of our own lives, the devil is always in the details. It's the little things we neglect, the assumptions we make, and the minor details we brush aside that often come back to have the greatest impact. So always be mindful, always be thorough, because you never know which tiny detail will be the one that defines the outcome. Thanks for watching. If you found this story fascinating, do you want to forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the world of crime and investigation. We'll see you in the next one.